Yeah. Well, hello, Trisha. Welcome to day number 2 of quantum time travel. So the theme today is going to be about the medicine wheel and the neuroplastic time. So I call it the neuroplastic time, the neuroplastic medicine. So we're going to be talking a lot about this ancestral map of time, which we can call the medicine wheel. And the medicine wheel is in a way also like this map of the evolution of the soul. So neuroscience finally is kind of proving that ancients, they knew that time is perception and perception is malleable. So this session is going to be about embodiment, and we are going to be feeling time as a spiral of our soul as well. So we are going to be training a little bit our brain and heart to become this living prophecy. So also aligning the past and the present and the future through this concept of Aini, which is harmony or sacred reciprocity, a concept from the Qhipa nation, from the fire shamans, which lineage I belong to. So let's start our session with dropping down to our breath to align ourselves a little bit for the teachings. So I invite you to place your hand on your heart space and let's drop down into our breath for a while. And if you feel cold, you can place your other hand on your lower belly. And let's take some deep inhalations and deep exhalations. Allowing our hearts to open and our brains to align and synchronize. And hereby enter timelessness. So, first part of our session, we are going to be talking about the medicine wheel mostly. So, in the shamanic worldview, time is alive and it spirals. It kind of also, in a metaphorical way, it sings back to us. And it remembers, the time remembers actually. And then the medicine wheel becomes more than a spiritual tool. It becomes like this map of time, or a map of consciousness, we can even say. So it's like the map of this, of the soul's cyclical evolution. And the medicine wheel then, as the time map, well, our lineage, Qhipa lineage, they have 4 cardinal directions. And as you know, and I know that you've been studying the medicine wheel, we have the south, which is represented by Sachamama, and she is the great serpent. And she represents time of shedding, releasing the past, and then lessons of body and survival. So it's all on the physical level, the serpent. And she even, after dealing with her traumas, she allows us to enter this space of timelessness, which we are in now through this session, which we achieve through our breath and conscious connection to our heart and brain. So the serpent is also aiding us, the serpent medicine is aiding us through rooting for ourselves, learning to root for ourselves. And this is really a quality that we all must work on developing, to be able to stand in our power. And then the notion of release, releasing everything that no longer serves. So these are the main medicine of the serpent, the medicine wheel of the Qhipa nation. So in the West, there we get the great Jaguar, mother, sister Jaguar, and she is called Otorongo on the local language, the Qhipa nation language. So she's representing the time of shadow and death, and walking through our emotional endings without fear, and also understanding that every ending is kind of like a portal into the deeper parts of this time spiral. So what Jaguar is teaching us is to release our emotional pains and move on through our experience with courage, and in connection to this universal love, which then in turn makes us fearless, which is kind of like this main medicine of the Jaguar. So then we have the north. And this direction is represented by the hummingbird, the royal hummingbird. And she is called Siwar Q'enti on local language. So she's representing this time of joy and nectar and also ancestral memory. And she's also teaching us to drink from the timeless well of the ancestors. So then the spiral of the medicine wheel ascends us here into this new, deeper perception of the life, which then connects us to our soul. And this is the core of the North medicine, of the North direction medicine, the hummingbird. Us getting reconnected to our soul's calling and to our ancestral memory. And then we reach the East, and the East is represented by the great eagle or Condor. On local language, the Condor is called Kuntur. So East is representing the time of vision and rebirth of our personality, like shedding of the ego, transcendence. Then in the East medicine, we are able to see the past from the bigger perspective and the present and the future, like in this one flight, like the medicine becomes the vision of our whole timeline, the past, present, and the future at once. And then this medicine of the eagle is kind of returning us to the core of our soul. And in these terms, we can say, shamanic terms, that it's returning to the sun of our soul. See? So, and then around these four medicinal gates, I like to say, it's like this time becomes the spiral path of the soul. And each cycle that we return to the medicine wheel to be reteaching ourselves, relearning ourselves. In each cycle, we kind of return to the same lesson or the point, but we are always at the higher vantage point of awareness. So we always get smarter and smarter and more intelligent each time we revisit these teachings, And obviously, it's for medicine people, it's a lifetime calling it becomes a discipline to practice these medicinal wisdom teachings, so to call them, and to expand our knowledge with time. So let's talk a little bit about these two interesting concepts of how the Q'ero nation is looking at time. So these are called Ñawpa and Qhipa. And these are kind of like these main time codes of the Andean and Quechuan tradition. So they say time is not forward or backward, but inner and outer. So this is very different than the perspective of ours in the West and how we look at time. So let's look at this concept a little bit more. It's very interesting. So this concept, Ñawpa, it's pronounced Ñawpa, literally means in front, but it refers to the past. So this is contradictory. It's in front of us, but it refers to the past. And For us Westerners, the future is in front and the past is in the back. It's a beautiful notion. And why is this good? Because in this way, we can kind of see the past if it's in front of us. And that makes it very malleable then, and interchangeable. And this is how we deal with retrieval of our soul parts, for example, or releasing past trauma, whatever we can deal with from our ancestral times. Beautiful medicine to see the time in this way. So when past becomes visible and our stories, they get known and our memory, ancestry, beautiful stuff. And then the notion of the future is called Qhipa. It's pronounced Qhipa. So literally means behind. So we are talking about the future, but it's behind. And why is it behind? Because we cannot see the future as it didn't happen yet. It's invisible. And it's emerging from behind of this spiral of time. So this flips really our view, our Western worldview, that we are walking backward into the future and kind of being guided by this ancestral light, which we see from the front. And then the unknown, which is a great aspect of this, is kind of approaching us from behind. And this becomes like this river of energy that we need to learn how to trust, as we live this experience, this embodiment that we are in. So let's touch a little bit from our lineage, the initiation, and something that I like to call the spiral rites and the cyclical evolution of the soul as well. And then we are reaching this point where we have a few reflective questions. It will be fun. So shamanic initiations, all of those, we can kind of say that they're collapsing timelines into ceremony. So for example, in our lineage, we do a lot of fire ceremony for releasing or for manifestation, or when the initiations are going on, for example, as Munaiki rites, then a lot of fire ceremony is getting done, to kind of install through ceremony these timelines that we are calling upon, especially the older energies from the lineages of Munaiki. So fire ceremonies kind of release old identities, let's say. That's the main passage of those. And a rite of passage, we can say, well, we are living those throughout all our lives. A rite of passage is, well, also when we become 18 years old, like our adulthood life, or when we get married, or when we get a child. All those are rites of passage. But throughout the medicine wheel, well, rites of passage, they kind of allow us to meet our luminous selves, and especially through these deeper spiritual initiations, which belong to the lineages. So these are energies which are thousands of years old, and the people, carriers of the lineage, have been passing them on from family to family, generation to generation. So these are really cherished energies, and one can feel them, when they get installed in the field, really, through ceremony act. So then we have this concept of a despacho. And despacho is like an offering. It's like an offering, well, let's say, to this river of Aini. This is reciprocity, harmony. And for example, we can offer a despacho to the cosmos, or offer it to Mother Earth, the prosperity of hers. We can also lay an intention that we offer a despacho for our own benefits, or our village's benefits, or countries. Whatever our intention is, well, as long as it's coming from the purity of the soul, everything is allowed, So as an offering to the creation. So we can, through this despacho, also say that we are shedding parts of the older stories, because what we're trying to achieve is to call upon a new layer of the future by offering something to the creation, to Mother Earth, through either, composting a despacho, which is a slow process like burying in the earth, or simply putting a despacho in the fire, the flames. And this is kind of like a combustion. We are calling upon a quicker uh, process of manifestation upon, so through the fire. And as fire shamans, we do a lot of firework as well, like offering through fire. And this is what we call, rapid transformation, in our lineage. Because once when we go through a ceremony of release, well, this is already in the field, installed in the field, and then it's all about embodiment and living this reality that we want to call upon. So to this notion, as we touched all these aspects of and directions of the medicine wheel, we can realize then that our soul is not evolving in a linear way, in a linear manner. It descends also into shadow as the spiral is also going up and down as it evolves. It ascends also into vision, and, and then it returns to the center, returns us to the center. And each time we get there, we're kind of wiser and we understand better and we feel more free and more luminous as well. So repetition here is a mother of everything, really, that our integration of the medicine wheel becomes like a discipline, and then it becomes a structure of our backbone, and then you kind of become this medicine wheel and can practice it really, from the core of your system by doing this discipline. So let's talk a little bit about these shamanic concepts of death, rebirth, and ceremonial time. This is very interesting. So in shamanic practice, death and rebirth are not events on the edge of life. This is something that we experience in our daily timelines. And we can step into this consciously, as we step into ceremony. And in ceremonial space, we are really actually in a space of timelessness, and we leave the notion of the clock as we enter the field. And then, as the fire ceremony burns through our past, it's kind of seeding this luminous future through this timeless space. So then, through a soul retrieval, we can kind of reweave this fragmented spiral, and bring our past selves home to ourselves again, and feel whole to be able, to live up to this best possible future that we also want for ourselves, all humans, including you and I. So ceremony then becomes how shamans live, and it's kind of like living outside of time while healing time itself. It's very interesting notion, because you kind of allow time to flow through you, what we touched yesterday in the first session. So, Trisha, let's just close our eyes for a while and imagine the medicine wheel kind of spinning just beneath us. And as the medicine wheel is spinning, let's then feel the south, the west, the north, and the east. And let's imagine those directions as the rivers of time. And through these rivers of time, we are learning to both to receive and to give. And Aini as harmony becomes alive in us. And the medicines of the south, west, north, and the east are getting fully integrated into our present timeline. So as this energy has settled into our field now, Trisha, I invite you to gently move your awareness into the present moment again, and then let's reflect a bit, you and I. So this is actually a reflection we both can kind of think deeper about throughout the whole session, but I want to ask you a question. Hopefully you will engage. So when you walk the medicine wheel, and then in your mind's eye, which direction is calling you the most right now?
So,
What does that reveal to you about the timeline that you're living in now, that you're called mostly by the south direction? And that's the physical plane. The south is the physical medicine, the physical plane of the medicine of the great mother serpent. So you're called by south. And what does that reveal to you about the timeline you're living in?
a lot of transformation that I've needed to transform, change a lot, let go of a lot of my old patterns, heal a lot of ancestral patterns too.
I see. Well, that gives great sense, Trisha, as is the physical plane that we are living in these 3D bodies, you know, and actually the whole healing starts on the physical plane. Before we lay in a foundation with a healthy body, healthy physical experience, well, all the other parts of the reality, which are emotional, mythical, and spiritual, they kind of cannot align fully. The healing will not be fulfilled fully. So it's kind of very logical that your core is calling you to the medicine of the South. Thank you for sharing. Sorry. So now we got a question, which is a reflection which we can make to the moment of our lives and where our perception of time kind of stretched. Can we remember a moment in our lives where we experienced something where time stretched, slowed, or even dissolved completely? So, how might this feeling, sensation of time dissolving, how might this have been that this was opening maybe new pathways in our brain, this experience? So, if we try to remember one of these timeless experiences, and I remember yesterday you mentioned an experience by the lake where you sat in your own world and reflecting, and kind of time dissolved into this experience of you just being in the now. You know, so these moments can, when we recall them, in a way open new neural pathways in our mind. This is very important also to this notion of us being able to understand the time properly. So this was a part of our first transmission. So mostly about the medicine. Now we are going to speak partially about neuroscience as a perception and plasticity. So we can then say, through neuroplastic perspective, that the brain is kind of this time machine. And while the shaman is seeing time as a spiral of energy, well, the neuroscience is seeing time as a construct of, our perception. And what is our perception? Our senses, both our hearing, seeing, smelling, but also how our skin percepts. So our brain then is not experiencing kind of this objective tick-tock reality through the clock. It's building time from something neuroscience calls neural clocks, attention networks, emotional states, bodily rhythms. And every second we experience, it becomes like this story that our brain is telling us about change. It's all about our brain interpreting the change in the next moment. And this is perception, actually, how we perceive every next moment which is evolving in front of us, in front of our senses. So the neural clock is kind of like deep inside this, our brain. And these regions are made for tracking and for predicting rhythm. And these are called like these basal ganglia in our brain and cerebellum. So they detect timing and sequence. And this is how we can perceive patterns, and ready ourselves for a repetitive, motion or an action, which we are very loopy, humans. We like to stay in the loop and just to stay predictive. This is how our brain loves to operate most, in predictability. So then our prefrontal cortex, which is our newest mind, then it kind of creates this narrative of before, now, and after. So this is saying to us that our newest brain, the prefrontal cortex, is the one creating a story of time, before, new, and after, now and after. So that says to us that the brain is not this passive recorder, and that our attention, it can kind of slow time. For example, we know this through emotions. Emotions can stretch or compress time. And this state is kind of beginning to shape the story that we perceive through our senses. So again, we come to a point where we can remember the last time, for example, when time seemed to slow down, or every detail of this experience kind of burned into our memory, something that we never can forget. Or the last time that we were in some kind of creative flow, or dancing, or making love, or we're even lost in some kind of artistry, and then hours kind of disappear, when we do something which is really calling us from the core of ourselves. And we kind of step out of time and the clock. So then we realize that time is felt. Time is not kept, and we feel the time. Then we can feel it disappear or pile up even, in a bad situation. Sometimes seconds can feel like hours or days even. And we know this stuff. So, Trisha, we came to a point, and there will be a little bit more like of these technological terms, because we are dealing with neuroscience. And it's also good for us to get to know these, so to call them switches. And I like to say, well, I love to learn how this body and mind, how the human ticks, how do we operate? What is inside us? And this knowledge, this wisdom, Trisha, is not, only for the doctors, only for the academics, As we, in the internet time, we got access to all of this. Every human can get aligned and educated to kind of get to know these internal systems so that we can know how we function, how can we help ourselves, or others, so to say, the ones that we love. That's the whole key. So there are these centers in our brain, or the operative systems, which they call the default mode network and the reticular activating system. They call them the DMN and the RAS. And then these are kind of two systems which are constructing time and belief systems in our mind. So the DMN is kind of like this inner narrator, creates stories in our mind, and it's active when our mind is wandering to the past and the future. Then we can say if this DMN, the default mode network, is kind of overactive, it can lead to rumination in our field and in our heads, emotions, anxiety, and then living outside the present. Because as the DMN is the part which is kind of active when our mind is wandering into the past or the future, and we are not able to stay in the present, which is really the optimal state and place for humans to function in, to kind of be in this center. Then you can observe the past and the future without getting anxious or depressed by not having the ability to influence what happened and what will happen. So meditation and ceremony, they kind of quiet this DMN and they collapse this sense of linear time as well. So this is very helpful to understand that there is a switch in our mind, in ourselves, which actually is automatically doing this. And by being aware of this, we can help ourselves really to center in the present time. So then the second system, the RAS, reticular activating system, this is a cool system in our brain. It kind of filters reality according to what we believe and expect. So these are our belief systems. And if our RAS is tuned to fear, then we will always see threats and we will confirm this feeling of fear that is our fundamental feeling, because this is our belief system. But if our RAS is tuned to vision and to gratitude and to future selves, we will always magnetize synchronicity and possibility to ourselves. And this can all be reprogrammed. These networks can create this illusion of time that either kind of binds us or frees us. So then, Trisha, let's speak a bit about how we perceive time under trauma and flow, creative flow. So trauma and ecstatic flow are two kind of extremes of time distortion. We know that trauma kind of freezes time. And this is when our amygdala, this is a part of the brain, the central part of the ancient brain that we carry, is overfiring, it's overactive. And then memories that we store, they become these proper timestamps, we can call it. And then, through a traumatic experience relived, through a smell or a sound, or glancing something that reminds us of the trauma, we collapse the present, into the past instantly, and we are reliving this trauma. So this is how our brain actually recalls the trauma and recalls this freeze state, which is not good for us, not healthy for us. We know this. So then the other extreme is the creative flow, or the ecstatic flow, we can call it. This is bliss, the human bliss, when we are kind of in this super potent place of creation. And then this prefrontal cortex activity kind of decreasing in this flow state. And action and awareness, they merge together. And then minutes, they can feel like hours or vanish, even entirely. And this is why shamans, when they enter ceremonial flow, they deliberately enter this flow. And it allows them to exit clock time, to access what we call soul time and field time. And modern psychology now is calling this altered states of consciousness. So when we reach this concept of altered state of consciousness, it's worth mentioning a little bit how breathwork and psychedelics and are collapsing this perception of time. This is connected to our subject. So research on breathwork and psychedelics and meditation, it kind of shows us that, for example, slow rhythmic breathing synchronizes this heart rate and brain waves and our emotions also. So then psychedelics, they kind of quiet this DMN, the default mode network, which is in charge of us perceiving past and the future. And then the psychedelics are creating this timeless state, an increased neuroplasticity even. So, and as we know, neuroplasticity is the ability of our brain to rewire and renew itself. So both of these, breathwork and psychedelics, they kind of allow for us to reconsolidate our memory. And this is also a psychological aspect, which psychologists use a lot in their work, reframing our traumatic stories, reconsolidating our stories around the trauma, so that we can be able to perceive our trauma in another way and help ourselves really, truly. Because this is all about our belief systems, And when we realize once that things are not happening to us, but for us, then we're kind of raising this perception and we're entering a place where we can really release these traumas. Most of the humans are carrying trauma. That's a human experience. So this is kind of this mirroring, the scientific mirror is mirroring what shamans do in ceremony. As shamans, they a lot of the times they use the drum, and then the rhythm becomes the rhythm of our heart representation. The breath is kind of increasing this focus. And then we, through ceremony and opening sacred space, we enter this space of timelessness. And this is where we create. And this is where our brain is beginning to respond by unlocking these neuroplastic parts and states where change is really possible quickly and in real time, And this is the magic of the moment of the now, the present moment. And then we can say that the present is this neuroplastic portal. So our brain is changing itself through a process which is called experience-dependent neuroplasticity. And what does this mean? This is meaning that what we pay attention to, it kind of becomes repeatedly a rewiring process of our neural networks. So what we pay attention to is actually carving our new neural pathways. And this empowers us to know consciously that what we choose to pay attention to is creating our reality. And this is so simple, but a little harder to implement. A lot of discipline is needed for this and conscious, aware responses. So, we mentioned both in our first course, Polarity Code, and yesterday how elevated emotions, these are the very important component of being able to bend the notion of the time. So elevated emotions like gratitude, love, awe, joy, kind of signal the brain. Keep this feeling. That's a safe place. Make more of this chemistry, And then kind of this cascade jumpstarts the process of us coming closer to our future selves, to our best destiny lives that all humans so long to live, to get a good life in its simplicity, a good, happy life. That's what we all want. And then this entering the now, the present moment, and kind of switches the brain from predicting based networks from the past to creating from the present. And this is why meditation, breath work, ceremony, and shamanic journeys, they're so powerful. They kind of evict the mind from the old linear thought, and they install new memories from the future, the ones that we so long, so want for ourselves. So now let's touch something which is called the future self coherence. And this is how, when we combine the RAS, the reticular activating system, and the theta state plus emotion, when these three combine, well, then we really are creating coherence. And this allows our heart and brain to synchronize. So our reticular activating systems kind of tunes to match the reality that we are envisioning. And then our field is starting to broadcast this new signal, which we then can match from the quantum field and attract to ourselves. Do you remember yesterday we mentioned how our future selves already exist in the field, and we already installed them into our fields, both our past and future selves, at the closing ceremony yesterday. So they're present with us now here. So this then becomes like the neuroplastic prophecy, because as we know, when we can predict that we, by focusing awareness on our reality and what we focus our perception on, we create our reality by choosing what we choose. And this gives us really an advantage in how can we achieve these desired lives that we so very much desire for ourselves. So in a way, we can say that we are rehearsing our destiny then, when we become conscious of these mechanisms in our mind and aware of our destiny before it arrives, and we kind of create it also. We add all the desired details to our future. So the brain and the field then begin to trust that as a memory again, and synchronicities then begin to happen around us as we're in this magnetism of coherence. So let's have a practical key. Okay. It's kind of repetition in the field. So every time we enter this state of heart-brain coherence, we activate gratitude and vision so we can see and feel our future selves as real. And then in a way, we are bending this spiral of time in our own favor. And what was once far away, it becomes inevitable then, you know. And as our nervous system is already living there in this state, it kind of becomes a part of us already. So, Trisha, let's have a few reflective lines here. So, if your breath could carry you between past, present, and future, in kind of this one seamless flow, what healing or insight would you bring back into your current reality? So, if your breath was the vessel between your past, present, and the future, and the breath is a vessel for shamans, for shamanic journeying, shamanic work, ceremonial work. And this experience was in one seamless flow. What healing or insight would you bring back into your current state? Is there anything that you could envision from your memory or from your desired future to bring into your current reality?
Just to learn how to forgive myself. Um, and to not pressure myself so much, to allow myself to live a little bit more rather than to take on everybody else's burdens
Mm.
throughout my life.
Mm. Mm. Thank you. Thank you. Noble, you know, and humble. And I wish for you that you, in one of the cycles of repetition of the spiral of time, that you will reach this point where you'll be able to forgive yourself and really feel living your own experience fully. And I think this is at the core what most of the humans are seeking when we become aware. Thank you for engaging in this question. So the Kero, you know, nation, they say sometimes we walk backward into the future. So next question, reflective question is, and this is good for us, really, for these mechanisms of understanding of our brain to help us, you know, so that we can better use these tools. So how could trusting what's behind you, is kind of like the wisdom of your past, how could trusting the wisdom of your past change the way you step into your forward now?
Well, it already is helping. um, Recognizing and accepting the part that I've played in it, really seeing and not playing the victim, understanding that um, I that I played a part in it, that it wasn't everybody else's fault, and taking the lessons that I've learned from it, accepting those teachings,
Mhm.
rather than wanting to just cry and whine about it. I don't know how to explain it. Um, I spent a lot of years just feeling bad about everything that's happened throughout my life, and um, doing the oh woe is me about it. But over the past so many years, I've actually been able to look at the things that have happened, understand the part that I've played in it, but I've also been able to see the wisdom and the lesson in it that I've learned from it, and I've been able to grow from it.
Mm.
There's still some things that, I don't understand, but I know that somewhere in there there is a lesson. Somewhere in there there's something that will eventually help me, I hope, at least. um
Mm.
I'm learning to
Thank
accept
you.
it all, and I think that's what we have to do from the past.
Thank you. Thank you, Trisha. And my observation is that you're very much aware. And also when you express yourself, I can see that you also are seeing yourself in advancement each cycle, which is really important. This is why the notion of the time spiral can help us heal in a better way, because as spiral moves, each and every time we come into a new circle, we are getting a bit more smart, a bit more healthy, a bit more aware. So the medicine wheel becomes then this living portal, and then we can walk through this shamanic time, notion of time. Thank you, Trisha, for being so honest and sharing. So we have now reached kind of like this main transmission before the outro of our session. So in this transmission, we're going to be walking the medicine wheel in the quantum field, and we're going to embody this harmony, the concept of Aini. So the medicine wheel is a doorway into the spiral of time through the levels of reality, which then are south, the serpent. She's kind of whispering to us, shed the past, crawl closer to earth. It's all about humbleness and beauty. So then shed every old identity or a trauma loop, or release the fears so that we can kind of fertilize our future. Then the West, the Jaguar, she prowls the shadows and she faces the death without fear. And that teaches us to walk with dignity through life, this medicine of the Jaguar. So the death of an old self is kind of opening the doorway to infinity, to rebirth. And then we have the North, the hummingbird. And she's humming that we should only drink from the nectar of life, the sweetest nectar of ancestors. And to trusting the joy around us and within us to carry us kind of home to ourselves again. And then through the medicine of the North, our lineage kind of is beginning to walk with us in every step of our life, kind of gets integrated into our field. And then at the East, we have the eagle. And the eagle medicine teaches us to see the whole field, see the bigger perspective, and to fly, as we say, wing to wing with the Great Spirit. But we can also say with the wind of the Spirit, so that we can see the whole timeline of our lives, ourselves, or whatever we lay our intention to, so for our local communities as well. So here in the East, our future self and destiny, they become visible and alive. And then when we activate all these directions by invoking them and calling upon them in ceremony, we are collapsing into presence, into the present moment. And then the soul kind of is beginning to spin free from this notion of the clock, from the time, how we perceive it, from the linear time. So Aini is this sacred flow of time and energy, the harmony. So in Kara tradition, Aini means sacred reciprocity. It is the giving and the receiving between self, others, nature, and cosmos. And there's also a saying, it says, today for you, tomorrow for me. This kind of describes this reciprocity and the selflessness of the process of reciprocity. So the recognition that what we offer from ourselves, returns to us in the spiral of time at the later point. So when we enter the quantum field in harmony, in Aini, which we then in neuroscientific terms can call the coherence, all of our manifestations, they accelerate because we are aligned and we are not asking from this place of lack. And then offering gratitude and alignment, the field will always respond to this coherent state, to generosity, to reciprocity. So Aini then is how abundance can flow on all planes, the material, the emotional, the spiritual, the relational, the energetic even. So we can say when we give to the field gives back multiply. And there's this very old notion which the Buddhists have, like we have to, in our lifetime, to sacrifice something from ourselves, whether it be for the collective or for our families, and at the very end, sacrifice to the spirit. And in a metaphorical way, we can say that we are in a spiritual world by contributing to the collective consciousness awakening, that we're kind of depositing money all the time in the spiritual sphere. And at the time point when enough money is deposited, then it begins dripping down on ourselves as manifestation of our desired futures, So these are even older wisdom teachings that are telling us that partially the sacrifice of ourselves for the collective good is needed to be able to reach higher states of awareness and also, higher states of quicker manifestation and real-time manifestation, and these synchronicities mystical experiences become part of our everyday life, and all becomes to feel like magic, really. And we can get here, truly. So when we walk the spiral of personal and collective time, then we realize that time travel is not only personal healing for personal healing, but that every shift that we go through while we walk the spiral, it's rippling through the whole civilization, through the whole collective field. So that is saying to us, just by healing one inner child loop or a trauma, our lineage is kind of breathing relief through generations. It's beautiful. And then when we step into our future self-coherence, we become this signal of possibility, also for the collective. And then practicing Aini with the cosmos, we can create a pathway of abundance and reciprocity for other people to walk. And then we begin all reflecting in each other, in our aligned state, and we harmonize all together. So shamans say, Trisha, that when one person walks in beauty, kind of the whole village begins to remember the song, you know. And then this becomes the essence of the quantum time travel. So we don't just change our story by merging with our past and future selves. By doing this, we are bending the story of the collective, of the world, by healing ourselves. It's a beautiful and deep thing. So this is not a selfish act, merging with our past and future selves to align with the best possible destiny line for ourselves, the life that we so desire. So, Trisha, we're at the ending soon, and we are going to have a guided quantum field and medicine field integration outro meditation. So, let's both of us find a comfortable position and connect to our heart space. Move our awareness only on our breath and this very moment. Now let's try to inhale through our nose to 4 counts. Hold on the top and for 4 counts. Release for 4 counts. And inhale for 4 counts again. Now let's repeat this for a few cycles until we can feel that our heart and brain are synchronizing. Now let's imagine ourselves standing in the center of a luminous circle. So at the south, the serpent slides around our feet. Learning us to release the past and to shed all fear and heaviness, all of it. And at the west side, the Jaguar is silently padding behind us and whispering to us, walk through the shadow into your freedom. And then from the north, the hummingbird is fluttering around our head and whispering, follow joy and drink the nectar of life with your ancestors. So then in the east, the eagle is soaring overhead and whispering to us, see the spiral of your destiny and fly with vision. Now let's feel the four directions spinning around us, like this living wheel of time, merging past, present, and future. Now let's imagine a golden thread of light flowing from our heart into the Mother Earth, and also into sky and all directions. And then let's send gratitude for our life, for our breath, for our lineage, and even for our lessons, for our challenges, for they are our blessings in disguise, and also for the abundance that already is living in our future and in the unseen. So now we are going to embody abundance on all planes. Let's imagine this spiral of energy around ourselves that is beginning to glow brighter. And then let's call upon emotional abundance, feeling love and gratitude flooding our chest. And then the physical abundance. Imagine our resources, our health, and vitality spiraling towards us and around us. And then let's call upon the spiritual abundance, feeling this light pouring into our crown, connecting us to all that is. It's called the relational abundance, seeing our life surrounded by love, support, and soul connections. Now let's hold this elevated emotion for a few breaths, sending this energy to the quantum field as our living broadcast. Now let's collapse time into now. Imagining our past self, present self, and future self standing in a triangle of golden light around us. And one by one, let's embrace them until they merge into a single radiant you. And let's affirm to ourselves, I am whole, I am timeless, and I am the weaver of my abundance. Now let's slowly bring our awareness back into the now. You're welcome to rub your hands a little bit, wiggle your feet, touch your heart a little bit if you wish so. Welcome, Trisha. Day 2 is complete. Thank you for being here together with me today. Hope to see you on day 3 tomorrow. Thank you.